Welcome back to Harvard. Does any Republican candidate have the right stuff? Now, that's a great question, I think. Newt's broke, of course. Palente's invisible. Romney can't seem to decide which Romney he is today. Take a look at a new poll, however, up in New Hampshire. Likely Republican voters in the primary. Mitt Romney does lead, still at 35, followed by Michelle Bachmann coming up, but only to 12. Ron Paul and Rudy at 7. Rick Perry, the new kid on the block, at 4. Tim Pawlenty getting nowhere at 3. For more on the GOP race, let's turn to a real-life Republican consultant who wins races, Todd Harris. I'm being nice tonight. And David Corn, I'm always nice too, who writes for Mother Jones and is an MSNBC political analyst. You know, I'm going to ask you a question. I don't know whether you can answer it honestly or not. Is this thing gelling the way it usually does? It seems to me the way elections are, within the year and a half from the actual election, or less than that now, you know pretty much who the field is. Do you know who the field is?
Of course. I mean, I think that...
Who's running for president has a good chance of winning on your side?
I think that Romney has a very good chance. I think that Pawlenty has a very good chance.
Good chance?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a lot that's going to have to break his way, but if Pawlenty were our nominee, I think he would give Obama a run for the money. Look, I think you know, you'll probably laugh at this, but I think Rick Perry has
I'm not
a
laughing.
chance. If he... Look, he's a hell of a politician.
I'm crying on the inside.
He is a hell of a politician.
Is he going to run as president of the Texas Republic or president of the United States? I mean, his latest comments on secession lead me to believe he may not really be part of the Union.
Look, let me say this about Rick Perry. A lot of people, especially in the 202 and 212 area codes, like to make fun of him. As someone who has worked on a campaign against Rick Perry, I can tell you he's formidable.
You have kind of like the Chris Christie phenomenon. Very popular outside your state. Still popular, but not nearly as popular within your state. And there are even Tea Party groups within your state who like you but don't love you. Who say that when it comes to things like not spending a rainy day fund, an idea you came up with,
right?
You say one thing and do another. What do you say?
I say that a prophet is generally not loved in their hometown. That's both biblical and practical.
Okay, let's take a look. The New York Times reported, quote, in recent years, Mr. Perry has broken politically with Mr. Bush. That's George W. Bush. Questioning his credentials as a fiscal conservative, accusing him of being a big government binge, on a big binge, and playing down some of Mr. Bush's accomplishments in Texas in light of his own, well, Mr. Perry's public statements exposed a long simmering rivalry that's been little known outside the political fraternity, but underscores the rightward drift of the Republican Party since Mr. Bush was president. Is he to the right of George W. Bush?
Oh, sure.
If you think the Republican presidential candidates can't possibly get any lamer, then you haven't met the new Republican flavor of the month, Rick Perry. If you're not familiar with Rick, he took over as governor of Texas from George W. Bush, who's now referred to as the smart one.
My golf is done out on a shooting range.
Rick carries a gun even when he's jogging. By the way, Rick Perry isn't just talking when he says spiritual solutions. Back in April, faced with a devastating drought, Rick did what any solutions-oriented 21st century civil servant would do. He proclaimed a day of prayer for rain because we're ancient Mayans now. Here's what Texas looked like in April with the drought in red. And here's the Eden it is today.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you're not going to hear Rick Perry talk about compassionate conservatism. I doubt that you're going to hear him talk about No Child Left Behind and put a lot of emphasis on education.
So he switched from being a Democrat to all the way over to the right. He just went right past the Bushes over to
That's right.
He is headed the direction he's heading and the speed he's taking. He could end up all the way over to the right.
The truth is, though,
he overshot the moon. He's all the way out to Pluto here.
Is he a credible presidential candidate? You can imagine him as president of the United States.
Yeah, look, he's the governor.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Texas is a unique place. When we came in the Union in 1845, one of the issues was that we would be able to leave if we decided to do that. Texas is a very unique place, and we're pretty independent a lot to boot.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Texas.
Okay, let's go. Do you think the Democrats would like to run against Rick Perry rather than Romney or rather Bachmann?
I think he's more unpredictable, and I think he could put together a good campaign, but then again, he could come across as a buffoonish, swaggering Texan. And if you look at the polls, Americans still blame, if asked the question, George W. Bush for the economic hole we're in.
Yeah.
So any candidate that comes along that reminds people of George W. Bush comes with a tremendous liability, even if George W. Bush doesn't like him. And to come up and say, I'm not compassionate, I don't care about education, I want to be a hardliner of immigration, I have no real economic macro plan here, is still not going to win well, although he does look good in cowboy boots.
Well, of course, that's not going to be his message.
Let me just say about him, I don't get him. There's something about him that doesn't ring as authentic. It just seems, on the one hand, very fancy and big city and all that. He dresses well, looks good. But the other part of him is hee-haw, far right-winger. He doesn't seem that. It doesn't seem to be cohesive.